The clash between Kash Patel and Denzel Washington didn't just stir controversy, it shocked the conscience of the entire nation. During a tense podcast exchange, Patel looked directly at Denzel and uttered the words, "Go back to the zoo." The insult carried more than just disrespect. It echoed the painful history of racial dehumanization. Many expected an explosive reaction from Denzel, one that matched the hostility of the remark. But what happened next caught everyone off guard. Denzel didn't raise his voice, didn't flinch, and didn't let the poison in Patel's words infect his response. Instead, with the poise and strength of a man grounded in self-respect and history, he responded calmly, and in doing so, he held a mirror up to America's soul. Looking Patel in the eye, Denzel simply said, "I come from a lineage of kings, thinkers, and survivors, not animals. You can say what you want, but it doesn't make it truth." There was no anger in his voice, just quiet conviction. The studio fell silent, and even those who weren't expecting anything profound were suddenly frozen by the weight of the moment. Denzel's response was powerful, not because it was loud, but because it was filled with dignity. He didn't just deflect the insult, he dismantled it, exposing the ignorance beneath it. And that composure, that confidence, began to ripple through viewers who saw in him a reflection of resilience that transcends fame or celebrity. The video clip of the exchange went viral within hours. Social media erupted with shock, anger, and admiration, while Kash Patel faced a flood of backlash and demands for accountability. Denzel's calm and commanding words were quoted by millions. Educators, journalists, and everyday people began sharing the video as a lesson in grace under pressure. The hashtag #JeStandWithDenzel began trending as people praised not just what he said, but how he said it. His response reminded many of the power of choosing silence over shouting, dignity over ego, and strength over retaliation. It was the kind of moment that didn't need explaining. Everyone just felt its power. In the days that followed, Denzel was asked repeatedly to comment further, but he declined. Instead, he allowed his response to speak for itself. When he finally did give a short statement, it was brief and impactful. Sometimes you answer hate by refusing to absorb it. His words became a mantra for those tired of seeing public figures explode in outrage. He showed that maturity is more than a reaction, it's a decision. He reminded America that true power is measured by how you carry yourself when someone tries to drag you down. And for communities who often face microaggressions and open hostility, his reaction became a blueprint for self-defense without losing self-respect. Kash Patel, under intense scrutiny, attempted damage control. He issued a public statement saying his comment was taken out of context and not meant to be racist, but few were convinced. Civil rights leaders quickly condemned his words as textbook dehumanization and called for accountability not just for Patel, but for media platforms that enable such language. Multiple groups pointed out that no matter the context, telling a black man to go back to the zoo is undeniably racist. The defense rang hollow. Even some of Patel's allies in politics distanced themselves, signaling that what had been said crossed a line too bold to ignore. The incident began to be discussed in classrooms, church sermons, and corporate boardrooms. Teachers used it to illustrate emotional intelligence and racial sensitivity. Parents talked to their children about standing strong in the face of bullying. Mental health professionals spoke about the importance of self-regulation in stressful situations. Denzel's calm response became a case study in emotional mastery. It wasn't just a celebrity moment, it had become a cultural moment. His words inspired not only discussions, but also introspection, especially among those who had never had to think deeply about race and the power of language before. Prominent figures across industries voiced their support for Denzel. Oprah Winfrey, called it a moment that shows the power of knowing who you are. Barack Obama shared the video, captioning it with one word: grace. Celebrities from all backgrounds praised the actor's poise and pointed out that this is why representation and integrity matters. Artists began creating murals and poetry inspired by the event. Students posted reaction videos, thanking Denzel for showing them how to respond to hate without becoming hateful. It became clear that Denzel hadn't just silenced a man, he had ignited a movement. As momentum grew, the podcast that hosted the interview came under fire. Critics asked why no one stepped in when the insult was hurled. Sponsors began pulling out. Viewers demanded that platforms take a stronger stand against racist remarks and start prioritizing responsibility over ratings. A deeper conversation unfolded about how media rewards outrage instead of insight, and how silence from moderators can be just as harmful as the words themselves. Meanwhile, Denzel refused to capitalize on the publicity. He remained mostly quiet, reinforcing that not every moment needs to be turned into a personal brand. Over time, the narrative became bigger than just two men. It became about two versions of strength, one brittle and insecure, lashed out in cruelty. The other, grounded and enduring, answered with calm clarity. America was forced to reckon with how often we celebrate noise over wisdom, dominance over empathy. In Denzel's silence, many heard the echoes of generations who had been disrespected, yet endured with grace. His moment reminded people that power doesn't have to scream. Sometimes it simply stands tall and says, "I know who I am, and nothing you say can take that from me." Though the headlines eventually faded, the moment lived on. Denzel's words are now etched into social media archives, taught in classrooms, and quoted in everyday conversations. People who had never thought much about race or calmness in conflict now had a living example of both. And while Kash Patel's words may be forgotten, Denzel's response remains unforgettable. In a world full of noise, he showed that stillness can be revolutionary, that poise can be more powerful than protest, and that when faced with hate, the most radical thing you can do is remember your worth and walk through the fire without ever raising your voice.